Hi, everybody. My name is Anna Hollaender-Bird. I'm a licensed therapist and an expert in dealing with your narcissistic parent. And I'm here with my lovely friend and social media guru, Sarah, to have a conversation about all things Father's Day. So, welcome, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Anna. It's so good to be here. I'm a big fan of the work that we do here. It's so therapeutic for me, and I've been really benefiting from this program that we've put together for Father's Day. So I'm really glad that we are getting to sit down
I
like
know.
this.
I know. So, just for those of you listening, Sarah and I feel like we riff off each other a lot, and we realize that we often only focus on the mom wound and narcissistic mothers. But we wanted to do a special edition of fathers and just the wounding around uh, dynamics around our fathers. I know for me, my biological father died suddenly when I was 6. He took his own life. And I think that it's something I talked about a lot. I used to be a public speaker for Active Minds, and I would talk about the effect of his death. But it's interesting because I think that as we've been unpacking the mom wound stuff, then I think there's just a lot of waves that come up around the father wound and also parental loss. I've been talking about parental loss a lot with clients, and so it felt right to talk about it. And I know you were saying some things were coming up for you around your father as well.
Oh, for sure. I am, bullet points on why this your work is, really resonates with me. I have been no contact with my family, the
Hmm.
vast majority of my family, biological family for about 10 years now.
Wow.
And
That's a
it's
nice stretch.
it's such I was thinking about it, I was like, wow, that's like such a round
Yeah.
number. Like, and I was thinking about like people on their sobriety journey and like celebrating 10 years. And I was like, it feels kind of like that. But also I it's not the same really for me in my particular
Yeah.
sense. It's like I don't, I'm not gonna accidentally go over to their house. Like I'm not gonna see like I changed my life and have allowed myself to heal. And that was, at the encouragement of my therapists. Yeah, I
Hmm.
had a very wonderful team of therapists that was helping me with my CPTSD at the time. And they were noticing that all of our hard work was getting unraveled when I would travel from where I was living in California back to Texas and visit the family. And we noticed that, yes, in fact, was there was quite a bit of a root there. I mean, we had been
Yeah.
talking about it, but
Yeah. Yeah.
it did get to a point where it just was no longer a
Yeah.
safe experience, place for
Yeah.
me. I wasn't safe there.
Yeah.
So I have had this beautiful time to heal. Of course,
Mm.
there's so much grief that comes with it, so
Mm-hmm.
much grieving, so much of the living. A lot of the times it feels like I'm the one that died,
Hmm.
because they're all gone. They're all there living their lives. Everything is just
Makes
kind of
sense.
chugged along without me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that was, I knew that they were going to do that anyways.
Yeah.
So they did that while I was there.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I have in that last 10 years been able to heal so much and be able to understand myself. I was also diagnosed about 2 years ago with ADHD.
Hmm.
And so that's also helped me to really understand the framework of really what was going on in the family systems. My parents are um, assuredly personality disordered of some variety. I do not know what their diagnosis
Yeah.
is. I
Yeah.
do know that I am a narcissistic abuse survivor,
Yeah.
and that they did create an environment in which I was programmed to think that abuse was love.
Hmm.
And that was something that followed me well into
Yeah.
adulthood.
Yeah.
And still to this day, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay today, but I'm still a survivor today. But,
Yeah.
even showed up in workplace,
Hmm.
and being
Hmm.
targeted by
Yeah.
narcissists in the
Yeah.
workplace.
Yeah, and I think that is very relatable. And I think, Sarah, that thank you for sharing and thank you for talking about this. 'Cause I know, it's not easy to talk about. And I think our goal, or correct me if you want to add anything to this, but our goal with the channel and the content is to talk about serious themes, but to also add a spark of humor, a spark of common humanity, and sort of like the AA slogan, like we're not a glum lot. I think those of us who are survivors of narcissistic abuse, who are adult children, we don't have to be a glum lot either, which was my issue with other ways in which this is talked about. So thank you for being so open. And I think when we were framing this conversation, we talked about the idea that, you have the context of no contact, which is
Mhm.
awesome. I have the lived experience of parental loss, and I have a step parent that entered my life, a father
Mhm.
figure at 7 who was a functional alcoholic for many years and also has some narcissistic, as someone told me, narcissistic fleas. Let's just
Uh-huh. Yes,
at minimum, at minimum.
for sure.
So
The
I'm
tendencies are there.
yeah. So for those of you listening, there's a lot of ways that you may relate to having some wounding that makes Father's Day difficult.
Mhm.
Am I saying that right? Is there anything you would
Oh,
add?
absolutely.
Okay.
There's so many ways that that day can suck. It's just there's all different kinds of flavors. And
Yeah.
I think that what's really interesting about the work that we do, because like you said,
Yeah.
mothers are on the hook for so much, for all
Mm-hmm.
of the nurturing. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's very accessible. And I think you and I have experienced this in our own
Yeah.
healing journeys. It's very accessible to identify like this is a mom thing. Okay, my mom is really definitely like this is a thing that I can hear her voice, the inner
Yeah.
critic,
Yeah.
that there's that, and we've been dealing with that and unpacking that. And then there's just I think dads get left off the hook. You talk about how like we really do love to like we use a lot of joy and a lot of playfulness in what we create here.
Yeah.
And so if you see the cap cuts that we create, those I'm behind those, and
You're amazing, Sarah.
it is the most delightful,
Yeah.
joyous channel of my comedy chops that I am so happy to have of
Yeah.
service to the collective,
Yeah.
because it really is like it's such a great way to just hear this is like here's one quick thing, like this is what it feels like when you pick up the phone call from your narcissistic parent, or
Yeah.
this is what it feels like when you don't pick up the phone call from your narcissistic parent. And as we've been doing this Father's Day grief series, I have been having a really nerdy good time with Papa Was a Rolling Stone, and
Ooh.
using the phenomenal music, the
Yeah.
very lengthy introduction,
Yeah.
and chopping it into our cap cuts. And so it's turned into this very hip
Yeah. Yeah,
hop.
and I think that's like that Papa was a Rolling Stone one really strikes me because it's like the permission our society, at least historically, has given fathers to be withdrawn and or the expectation that maybe they would abandon
Mhm.
their children in some way, whether emotionally or physically. But we know that in our modern times, we're not down with that, for lack of a better word. We know that both a father and a mother they can show up and suit up, and that is what is expected with the job. But I
Yeah.
also think that it's also maybe why our society kind of diminishes when they get it wrong is because we kind of see the mother idealized in our society in movies and TV
Mhm.
shows, but we know our relationship with our fathers are really, really important. And I think like one of the things that has been harder in my own personal work and also when I work with clients around this is the person, if you're more narcissistic person was your mother, but your father or stepfather kind of didn't come to your aid, never stood up for you, then they become what I like to say is a flying monkey.
Oh,
They are the one that flies
terrifying.
in. Oh, you haven't heard that term, Sarah? That's a fun one. I
No,
love
but I
that
do
one.
have an absolute like bone deep fear of flying monkeys. So
Yeah, so
please tell me more.
they swoop in, and they help the narcissist do their bidding, which usually looks like just agreeing, shutting
Mhm.
down your point of view, and then in a way making the situation more emotionally difficult.
Yeah.
And does that, now that I'm saying that, is that a
Oh yeah,
relatable
no,
one,
no.
Sarah?
I lived in an entire nest
Of flying
of
monkeys?
flying monkeys. Yep. Yep. That
Okay.
you described.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, you described the house.
Okay, okay. And look, we're not trying to be flippant when we use these terms, but they
Yeah.
help paint the picture because a lot of times confusion is how we end up feeling in a lot of these scenarios, like what's happening, what's
Mhm.
going on. So I think sometimes the visual of the flying monkey or being
I
gaslit gives
agree.
us the visual.
It does. And it also, like, for me, it also like harkens to the childhood trauma of it all. Not just because I'm afraid of flying monkeys, but because like that is something that I can very much relate to of like, hey, that's how I felt. And even that's how they treated me, even when I was a kid,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah,
And
yeah. Um, so let's
we
I'm
were
just so
talking,
yeah, I'm so excited that you're here, Sarah. So there's Sarah and I, for those of you listening, could talk for hours and hours and hours. So it's like both um fun to see where we'll head with it. I think that we were talking a little bit about
what a
who.
father actually does.
Yes. And I think the reason we're talking about what a father actually does is because that's where often when we see where we're wounded, it's because something didn't happen.
Yeah.
So what would the ideal father do? And one of the things you and I thought about was protectiveness, because for those of you who don't know, I recently had a baby about, yeah, which was
Congratulations.
we'll do a talk about that journey from being an adult child to making the decision to have a baby. It was an interesting journey. But I watching my spouse show such protectiveness towards a 4 month old, right? And just it really kind of got me misty because I'm like, oh, protectiveness is not something like I felt from my stepfather who was in my life for years. That doesn't mean he never, again, we know all these things aren't black and white, but that was the general sentiment. And
Yeah.
um anything you want to tag on that, Sarah, about protectiveness and fatherhood?
Oh yeah, that is it's such a huge like void in my
Yeah.
life. It
Yeah.
was when I'm without going into much detail, but
Uh-huh.
trigger warning, my father is a predator.
Mm.
And so the protectiveness when we started looking at that, I was like, wow, no, that was just not existent.
Mm-hmm.
Unless it came to protecting him.
Oh.
And so that's
Oh,
where
okay.
the entire nest of the
Mm-hmm.
flying monkeys came in
Yeah. Yeah. And
because
look, and
yeah,
Sarah, I think maybe that's why you're so good at being self-protective too, right? Like, I just want to jump in and say, hey, like what we didn't have is usually what we're quite good at. And I've seen you be
very.
very, very self-protective, which is really cool to watch.
Thank you so much. Yes, that is so true. Nobody messes with me. I am I am very protective, and that is absolutely something
Mm-hmm.
that I have nurtured within myself
Mm-hmm.
entirely. And
Mm-hmm.
of course, I have, I've been able to foster a beautiful chosen family. And what
Hmm.
really has it's really just a very sweet spot for me is that even in like the darkest, most Stranger Things times of the 1980s that I was surviving, there
Yeah.
was always one person around that
Mm.
loved me, whether it was my grandfather,
Hmm.
or my childhood bestie, who I
Yeah.
still talk to every
So
day
cool.
to
That's
this
really cool.
day. And throughout my life, no matter where I was up, whatever kind of upheaval we went through, and you know moved across the country to places I didn't want to go, and very isolated throughout the entire experience. I was homeschooled. I was,
Mm.
and they used the homeschool
Mm-hmm.
to just kind of not educate us.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really did rely heavily on my library card and my radio.
Yeah.
And those two things made me the woman that I am today.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful for myself in that regard,
Mm-hmm.
because I really did learn to rely on myself. And what really was the huge part of the healing journey, it wasn't learning how to rely on myself and becoming independent in that sense. It was really like unlearning. It was to
Yeah.
deprogram
Yeah.
all of the things, like when I started doing subliminal affirmations was really when I was able to kind of go in and override
Hmm.
a lot of
Mm-hmm.
the childhood
Mm-hmm.
ick.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so, being able to get to Father's Day here
Yeah.
coming up,
Yeah.
and I'm remembering like Father's Day 10 years ago very vividly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I remember because I was I mean, this was peak. This is like, I'm leaving. Like, this is like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like having my final
Mm-hmm.
conversations. They may or may not be aware that
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they were aware at that point that those were the final conversations. But I was making myself clear as best to my ability as I could. And I really was able to, I've lost my train of thought. Gosh, now
Yeah, no, 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 it's okay. This is
it's
look, I think you know what I was thinking as you're talking. In there's a concept called fierce self-compassion, right? That when we think about being self-compassionate, we often think of like, oh, like a warm bath, sort of like the feminine energy, right? Of like being like loving, the maternal energy, right? But
yeah,
Kristen Neff talks about like the fierce self-compassion or the yin and the yang of self-compassion, which is like being compassionate is also like
yeah.
stop, back away. And I think that's the what we might look at as the paternal or the fatherly quality
The
of
masculine,
the
yeah.
masculine. And I think like when we think about Father's Day, this year, maybe really what we're talking about is how do we be self-protective this year, you
Yeah.
know? Because I think that's the thing to unpack with these days, right? Is it's like I heard this thing about Mother's Day where I think it was on the radio or something. It's like instead of saying Happy Mother's Day, they're like Happy day to all who mother, which is almost so many of us, right? In
That
whatever way we
is.
mother. Like
That's
you've
so much more
mothered me,
inclusive.
like we get
Mhm.
mothering from everyone, and I think the same with Father's Day. It's Happy Father's Day to everyone who has showed us protectiveness.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I remember my grandfather, who my son's actually named after. I
Aw.
think when I think back, it's not that we had a perfect relationship, but he was more fatherly to me because he actually oftentimes wanted to protect me, and I felt that.
Mhm.
And now looking back, I'm like, oh, right. That is something that even when you rebel against that a little when you're younger, it's
Mhm.
meaningful because you know the person cares. And a lot of us who have had more absentee kind of father figures, you really remember that feeling of not being cared for.
Oh, it's so true. It
Mhm.
reminded me when, listeners, you should know Anna and I met when we were dabbling in stand-up comedy.
Oh, yeah. I forgot. We should say that.
We do. I have that hook. I used to have this.
You're set. You're set. I just was, it was so good. It was so good.
Listen, let's talk about my entire stand-up comedy career was just a father wound.
Ooh.
The entire from woe to go was
Tomorrow.
just because it was something my dad couldn't do, but he always wanted to do.
Hmm.
And
Interesting.
yeah, and so I would talk, so I used the stage. He was in prison when I
Hmm.
started my stand up
Hmm.
and started going to open mics. And it gave me the attention I never
Yeah.
got. It gave me the validation. It gave me the horror of because I could work out all of just these like roasting my father,
Yeah. Yeah.
just talking about all of the, just kind of just really just kind of working it out. Um, for I would love to say for better or worse, but it's pretty. I mean, it's kind of well. Okay, here's for better. For the better is that stand-up comedy is what
Yeah.
got me to Los Angeles
Yeah.
back on this time.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful. I have no regrets in that regard. But it really was, it's something. Stand-up was something that we always humor was a really big thing in the house. It was a big family, so
Hmm.
everyone is just trying to get like the biggest laughs. So it was just always just kind of like we were in a cornfield. Okay, like that's just what was going on.
Yeah.
And so
But I,
that,
Sarah, I like, I want to, is it okay if I jump in very
oh,
briefly
please.
and say, I
Yeah.
like that, like, I think one of the other things you and I also connect about is like that, like the journey to healing this. Like, I don't like when we watch those videos that make the healing the mom wound or healing your father wound so fast and easy. It's like, no, this is like a cathartic journey. This is a hero's journey. So your stand up, it's like, even if you look back on it, it sounds like as the father wound, it
Mhm.
also sounds like you appreciated aspects at least of the journey of just releasing those
Oh,
feelings.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I will say there is nothing fast and easy about doing open mic comedy for the span of 14 years. I will just
Yeah.
put that in there.
Yeah.
I did quit multiple times.
Yeah. Well,
and
you know, it's
retired
interesting.
last year, but still, it was, yeah,
Yeah.
it was very much a dad thing. And I used to have this joke about how it was actually a good thing that my father wasn't around a lot, and that I had I didn't have abandonment issues. I had abandonment blessings.
Oh, I like that. I like that. I like
I
that.
mean, it is true,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah.
You just
Well,
put it in a different font, and that's just a motivational talk
yeah,
point.
you know, I think as you're talking, I think how the father wound has shown up for me historically is just like my relationships with men, and just like I think when I look back, and I work with a lot of people around this with the dating piece, it's just like that, dating and dating and dating, like doing more dating, I think, than my peers were doing in high school and college and then post college was about the father wound, right? And it almost feels like, okay, it's too simple, but it wasn't, right? Because
Well, it
I
wasn't. It
really
was so
had a yearning for
daddy
that.
issues. They've
Hmm.
called it
Hmm.
daddy issues,
Hmm.
and I hated it.
Yeah.
I was because it was there was such, and I actually I think we said something about this on socials
Hmm.
recently, but I really don't believe in using some the flippant term of daddy issues,
No?
because it was put on me so often in those formative years
Hmm.
as a way to explain why I was in abusive relationships,
Hmm.
as a way to explain why I was experiencing, horrors,
Yeah.
or why I just couldn't, why I was, why I couldn't, I was always going and being attracted to people who were mean to me,
Yeah.
and they were like, and I remember like people who were like my friends saying things like, oh, she's just got these daddy issues.
Yeah.
And I felt like it was my fault, because it
Hmm.
really put on me of like, that's just her bad. Like, that's her
Hmm.
problem. That is her
Yeah.
problem. Not, I've grown up with a predator and I am still stuck in this cycle.
Yeah, and if we don't get our needs met, right, like then we are left with this yearning. And so we're going to try to fill the yearning somehow. And like we talk about coping skills, and usually the way we've coped was the best we could do at the time. And if you're listening to this and you've had some difficult romantic relationships, or also sometimes the opposite, right, where you never dated at all, um, it's okay,
Bless
right?
you.
There,
Yeah,
we're
good
not,
for
yeah,
you.
we're noting, and we're just curious together about the reasons we do what we do and what we're trying to get. And I think with dating and relationships, and we're always curious about like that. And it sounds like for both of us, there's a little bit of, not a little bit of, but there was the father wounding there.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm interested in like the difference that we have, because I had this relational loss. This dude is
Yeah.
still alive. He's running around somewhere.
Yeah.
Um, uh, you've experienced the physical loss of
Yeah.
your father. What do you like? How do you mourn a need? Was there a particular need that you didn't realize that you had?
In what sense? Just,
Like
yeah.
when you've been going, like it's a particular pain of like grieving something that you never had.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. That sorry, my little brain freeze. Sarah and I are doing this like a little bit later in the evening, and the baby is
These are the Quincy
gone. So
Jones
yes,
genius
yes,
hours.
yes,
Okay,
yes.
babe.
I love
We
it.
are,
I love this for us. I love this
yeah,
for
this
us.
is straight, this is
I
pure.
think I think the thing about my particular loss, which may or may not be relatable to other people, it was very sudden, not talked about at all within
Ooh.
my family. So it was almost confusing for me to figure out what had happened once I got old enough to realize it. But I
Mhm,
think what I've uncovered is every few years, there's just another wave that I have to ride with it,
mhm,
of usually like anger, because in my case, it was, a parent that took their own life. So there's a lot of like, why did you do this? And also, the remaining parent
mhm,
is someone who is a difficult person in many times. So some anger about that too.
mhm,
And then some deep, deep sadness of not really getting to know that part of like what my genetics are really, right? Of like this yearning to know. Because I think with my mom, oftentimes, like in DBT therapy, they call it like a tulip in a rose garden, meaning I've just felt very different from her and my
oh,
stepdad. So I think there's just been this yearning to wish I had known my father, because I feel like we would have a lot more in common. And also, I was very close with his family and felt more kinship there. But I think
yeah,
for those of you that have had loss, and this is something I talk about with clients too, is like, we don't get to wrap it up in a nice little box. Now, that doesn't mean it can't get better, right? There's, I think, times where it's felt like, okay, I'm at peace with this.
yeah.
But there's just big life moments where you're just like kicked back into some of those feelings, and letting that be okay.
And that's grief, isn't it? Grief is not
Yeah.
something that you heal from.
Yeah.
I was able to heal a lot of the wounds, a lot, and I was able to heal and deprogram and unlearn a lot of
Yeah.
things in that regard. But the grief will always be a part of my life every day, and it's nonlinear. So, like you
Hmm.
said, it comes up on holidays. That's why we,
Yeah.
are gathered together now. It comes up around, just it comes up
Hmm.
and you have to just deal with it. It's
Well, I think
um
this is like why we're doing this too, is I think for me as someone who over functions to try to avoid feelings, right?
oh, hey, I
That
know her.
if you can relate to this,
Uh-huh.
awesome. Which is like we're just giving it the moment, right? We're not ramming past it. I think that's one of the ways we reparent ourselves. That might be more like maternal in a way, but protective in a fatherly way of like if you had a ideal father and you were grieving, I think you would also be like, yeah, let's sit down and just be with this, right?
Yeah, let's have a cup of coffee and think about that.
I like that.
Yeah,
Have a good
yeah,
one.
make the space for it. And then
That's so touching, Sarah. I love that.
oh, thank you. I was going to blaze on through to the next bullet point, but you're right. Yeah, see, let's talk about there she goes. I mean, immediately
Uh,
like
well,
having like a tender moment and then wanting to like overwork and be like, oh, I don't need it. It's right here. I already talked about it.
that's what's fun. Again, I just want to say for anyone who's listening, I've really intentionally, I think you have too, maybe Sarah, tried to bring my own imperfection and the ways I'm wounded into conversations instead of avoiding them because
Yeah.
I realized that actually like that's how we help heal others is not presenting ourselves like the perfect person anyway. It's too much pressure,
Oh, for sure.
right? Instead, it's like, oh, here are some things that have helped us. Here's
Hmm.
how we see this journey. And then here is how we bring our own wounding and into it that hopefully helps people relate and feel less judged or shamed about being in their own journey with it.
I'm feeling less alone. I
Yeah.
mean, it's especially when you're dealing with a narcissistic parent. I'd love to get into like the kind of like what that looks like in practice, but there's a lot of isolation,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of very intentional isolation.
Hmm.
Uh, and so to heal that kind of a wound and be able to be okay with still, I really enjoy my own company.
Hmm.
I really enjoy
Hmm. Hmm.
being alone. But what do you think like the legacy of a wound is with a narcissistic father? Like what is growing up with a narcissistic father new? Because I don't have my dad's diagnosis. I just know
Yeah.
that the narcissistic bells they all just kind
Yeah.
of ring off. So let's talk about what
Well, I
that
think
looks
low self-esteem, right?
like.
Because, a lot of times for both men and women, I've talked this theme a lot with my spouse too about the father-son dynamics of like fathers are really important for learning like, you are good enough, getting that reassurance, knowing like you're loved, right? Like seeing the warmth. There's an exercise we do in therapy where an internal thing of like seeing the love in your parents' eyes, right? And just even if it wasn't stated, just that feeling. So I think one of the ways the wounding shows up in low self-esteem and then acting out in some way, right? I said it was for me like dating a lot more than I think like looking back. I think maybe I would have otherwise.
I
So
was for sure more
yeah.
socially active
Hmm.
than I would have
Hmm.
been had
Hmm.
I deprogrammed myself earlier.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
And I
I
think
wasn't there
also
yet.
putting ourselves at risk. Like I've worked with
Oh, for sure.
people, and a lot of our work has been around, um, in a non-judgmental way. I notice you put yourself kind of at risk.
Mhm.
Um, if I was your good, loving parent, no judgment here, but I might say, oh, you don't have to do that. Like, you don't have to be in that scenario. And noticing that over time, people stopped putting themselves in those high risk situations. And I think that was because there was no model of anyone setting a boundary or being protective with them, that the boundary was out of love, right?
Yeah.
Like, don't go to the desert and, like, do drugs with people you don't know, right? I'm using an extreme example to make the point, right? Because
Is it
that might
extreme or
be,
is it very common?
you're right, right. That might be dangerous. There may be danger there. And instead,
Think about that.
usually if you've had some sort of narcissistic fathering, you may find yourself doing that. Or it could go the other way, which is like the over functioning, over protecting yourself
Mhm.
in order to um, use that as a way, the over
Yeah.
functioning, like to prove you're good enough.
Yeah, and to protect yourself from
Yeah. Yeah.
what is
Anything you want to add though to that, Sarah?
well, yeah, I mean, like, what is it about having a narcissistic father that makes self-protectiveness so difficult?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think if in an ideal world, having both parents let us know that we are good enough,
Mhm.
that we matter. Like when we think about trauma wounds, like there's like this sort of list of them in this book. And I find it very heavy, which is why I don't always show it to people. But for the purposes of our conversations, the wounding is like, do I matter? Do I exist? Am I
Oh.
loved? Yeah. And
Oh.
so if you didn't have like both parents, or if you had, let's say the substitute could be a parent and another relative or close friend or aunt and uncle that kind of substitutes there, then I think some of that wounding I've noticed can be softened. But
Mhm.
if you didn't have both, right, you often didn't feel that sense of being loved and mattering that really propels us then to have a sense of firm identity and to be go out into life and to
Mhm.
make those self-protective decisions.
Mhm.
That's how I would
Yeah,
maybe state it. What do
that
you
makes
think?
I think that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
It really does. Like, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It makes it, just kind of, we'll keep on the comedy theme. Like
Mhm.
I didn't get those kind of like feelings of love and
Yeah.
protection and like admiration, or even that I existed. But if I could make him laugh,
Mm.
then I existed.
Mhm.
Then I was
Mhm.
valued. Then I was, oh, they were glad I was
Mhm.
there then.
Mhm.
And so,
Which is why I
whoo!
thought it was really cool when you were like, "No, I don't think I want to do this anymore." I thought
Oh,
then that was like really cool, right? Because you've done a lot of self-protective things for yourself, Sarah.
yes, that was a very important one. That
Yeah.
was a very important one. And
Yeah.
it hit me like a bolt out of the blue. And I said, you know what? We're good. I don't
Yeah.
think I actually need to be in these dark rooms
Yeah.
with a bunch of veiled narcissists.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or they're covert over. It's like a swarm. I didn't need that. I didn't need the negativity of that space anymore. It wasn't
Mhm.
allowing me to heal. My material was all about my family trauma, because every time I would talk about it, oh, we want to hear more. The energy
Mm.
vampires of it all.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
it's just, but it also like kind of brings up the point of like, my dad and I would laugh about, like, we laughed. I was
Mm.
laughing a lot in my childhood. Like,
Mm.
there was, so let's talk about a little bit of the duality of
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
holding both love for my father and also anger and acknowledgement that he's a monster.
Yeah, yeah, I think that the main concept that applies to both, the mom wound and the father wound is we don't invalidate anyone's experience and feelings. And we know that if you had a narcissistic or sociopathic father figure, that you can still hold love for them. You can have whatever you feelings you want to have. We're not excusing their behavior. We're not saying that's
No.
okay. But the minute we say you shouldn't feel X about them because they were like this, then we're perpetrating the same thing that they
Mhm.
have done, right? And
Mhm.
so I think that that's the key thing that like the key stance I take. And it was a stance that really helped me was just that all my feelings are valid and allowed here, and it's still your relationship with your parent, and you can navigate it as you see fit. But yeah, like from a trauma lens, we needed our parents to survive. That is like one of the premises, right? That in order to survive our childhood, we can't see them as fully bad.
Right. Yeah.
So we are then put in this double bind already, right?
Mhm.
And so that if that sentiment, actually, I was thinking about this with someone I dated in college, how sometimes I caught myself the other day saying that they were definitely emotionally abusive and narcissistic. And sometimes I still say, oh, like, you know what? They weren't a bad person. And I really caught myself the last time I did that. I'm like, hold on, why am I excusing their emotionally abusive behavior? That was
Mhm.
not okay. And
Yeah.
that's even hard years and years later for me to catch within myself because I think that societally, like how I was raised is, oh, just forgive them, right? Like that sort of alcoholic home
Uh-huh.
thing where you forgive all the bad behavior.
Yeah. Fully. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, he's out of prison now, so we're all going to get back together.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
no, we're
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. Something that has always been really, really helpful for me, I think
Mm-hmm.
it's something that we love to use on the channel is the pop culture mirror in helping to process
Mm-hmm.
all of this. And so like we
Mm-hmm.
talked about, we're using Papa was a Rolling
Yeah.
Stone and how the absent father is like a cultural archetype. I mean, even if he's physically there, we're almost like expected. It was like a 50s sitcom gag of like,
Yes.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
dads aren't supposed to talk to you.
Yeah.
They're supposed to come home from work immediately, go take a 2 hour depression nap, and then play Stairway to Heaven on their guitar for another hour and a half.
Ooh.
And then
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
love our little grief burps. Like having like a pop culture. Now, have you seen The Rooster?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry, I we were talking about that, Sarah. Yeah, I think sometimes TV is useful to show us what should have happened sometimes, and sometimes and
Mhm.
also it helps us show us what should have happened too, because sometimes we see something that happened to us on TV and we're like, "Oh, that's awful. Oh, hold on, that happened to me." And sometimes I still think that's okay, but no, when I see that happen to anyone else, that's horrible. So it helps us like kind of like get grounded in that too. But there's a show, The Rooster on Apple, and Steve Carell plays this really loving, warm, but also like has his own life, has flaws. But one of the main themes I see in that show is that he shows up. He wants to be involved in his adult daughter's life. He has a sense of protectiveness towards her. And it really warms your heart because I think that protectiveness is not something a lot of us has felt. But when we look at a character like that, we're able to see, okay, this is a characteristic of a healthy father dynamic. And I think the withdrawn father thing that you're talking about, I think that's your ambiguous loss. We have a Substack
Oh,
where we talk about the ambiguous loss because when someone is physically there, but they're not really there, like my stepdad, was a functioning alcoholic. It's like sometimes he was there and oftentimes he's not. But you can't name that within him. Like he'll never like come to grips with that. I remember there was one time where I got him tickets to this like car show thing because I thought like, oh, maybe we could connect. And maybe he'd
yeah.
be touched by that. Actually, I think it might have been for like a Father's Day. And he was like, I don't want to
Mhm.
go. I don't want to go. And I was just like, oh, dagger,
Oh,
right? Because it's like you're missing the point, right? But I think on the flip side, it's that archetypal father that like never felt they had to show up to connect
mhm.
with their child and also like doesn't really know how. Doesn't really show
Yeah,
up for anyone.
yeah, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Hmm.
So then it comes down to us, and
Yeah.
one of our favorite things to do is reparenting.
Yes. Yes.
And I feel like those like something like you're saying like seeing a father character who's like there and like good and kind and compassionate, like showing what that looks like. I think that something that like do you think we can use to help us reparent? Because we have to identify in order to reparent, we got to
Yeah.
be able to figure like note like, oh, he never he never paid attention to me, or like he never was like supportive of any of the things that I was interested in. Like
Hmm.
I had to find something he was interested in
Yeah. Yeah.
to be able to like level with him, and then that would be like our thing.
Yeah,
You
well, I
know,
think you and I have had all sorts of interesting reparenting conversations. I think reparenting can look all sorts of like different ways.
uh-huh.
But I think that knowing that you should have gotten something you didn't get. Like they say, one of the big core themes in therapy is grieving the parent you wish you had had, right?
Yeah.
And so once you know you didn't have it, which is
Mhm.
usually part of the journey, right? Then it's like, if I didn't have it, what can I do differently? I think instead of maybe reparenting, what I would say just to reduce the pressure is, what can I do differently? And I think that's a question I'm always
Ooh.
asking myself is like, I see myself heading down this path to get what I think I want here.
Mhm.
Hmm. Okay, what's underneath this? Because I'm usually headed over there very fast. And that could look like, drinking too much. That could look
Sure.
like overscheduling. That could look like underscheduling. But I think that, like, I was thinking for myself that I want to get back to my meditation practice. I
Mhm.
really don't like meditating, but I know it's a way that feels that I can sit with feelings and then I can actually process them. And so even though I don't want to, that's my inner like child, like, nah, I don't want to. I'm like, okay, me as a good enough like mother and father to myself are gonna be like, all right, honey, this is something that would be really good. This is, we
Mhm.
want you to like not explode one day because you haven't dealt with your feelings, right? And
That's
I think,
very good.
yeah, for
Yeah.
you, like, what does reparenting look like these days, Sarah?
So for me, reparenting, especially when it comes in particular to, the father would, it's kind of a difference between like the feminine and the masculine. And
Yeah.
so like when I was focusing on like, kind of my mother wound, it would be, about nurturing myself and taking care of myself and like
Mhm.
being like, yes, it's good to like schedule an appointment with the doctor and like,
Ooh,
doing things like
yes.
that, like those kind of those love languages for
Hmm.
myself. And then when it comes to healing the father wound, it becomes much more of this sort of divine masculine embodiment in which I'm taking action on something that
Ooh, I
I've
like that.
always wanted. So I'm taking action on, like making sure that I have it down on my calendar that I'm going to take piano lessons, like writing it down, like we're going to take an action, like doing something for my inner child
Hmm.
that is like I took myself to Disneyland. I couldn't get into the park this time. It wasn't on the budget this time, but I went to downtown Disney and I
Ooh,
had a Dole Whip at Trader Sam's and
yeah, I
I
love
went
it.
shopping at the little Star Wars spot and just ran around. Like it was a full and complete Disney
That's
day for me. Now
cool.
listen, I don't really go. I only go on roller coasters on
Yeah,
accident, but I know this because I also
yeah,
went to Universal recently. I'm doing these things to like, I'm taking action. I take myself to the beach
yeah,
kind of a lot.
yeah.
Like I've been to the beach in the last I've been to the beach 4 times in the last 7 days.
That's amazing. That's
And so,
amazing.
and it's not a whole beach day each time, but you know what it is? It's me being like, who lives in Los Angeles and has 2 feet? Me. Okay. And then I just boom,
Yeah,
Santa Monica. And
yeah.
so it's
I
it's
love
these
that.
sort of like action oriented
Yes,
things of
yes.
like, let's do something fun together.
Yeah, yeah. If things were okay, if I felt protected and loved, what would I take myself to do?
And I do feel protected and
I know
loved.
you do.
And so I'm able
Yeah.
to do this for
Well,
myself.
that's the reparenting work, right? You're saying this was my father, not a good father, but in my day-to-day life, I
Mhm.
have found a way to reparent myself and get myself to a place where I feel safe enough to do these loving things for myself. So, in my estimation, that is everything we're talking about.
Uh-huh.
So, good job, Sarah. Awesome.
Thank you. Oh,
Yeah,
thank
yeah,
you. Oh
yeah.
my gosh.
I'm wondering, Sarah, should we maybe move towards our final thoughts because I'm getting a little, I'm getting a little sleepy.
Yeah, mama. Absolutely. Absolutely. So
I'm
like
taking, I'm taking care of myself here,
I am
y'all.
so proud of you and like honestly, y'all, this is such a good thing. Anna is speaking up for herself. You're advocating for yourself. Good job. I'm really proud of
I
you.
could
And
talk for all day,
absolutely.
every day with you about this, though.
Oh
So
yeah.
I feel
Well,
like
listen.
let's talk about some other, maybe we could just talk about, if you resonated with anything we said today,
Mhm.
please, there are so many ways that you can support the father wound and like sort of work on healing it. You have a lot of, we both have a lot of resources on Substack if you
Mhm.
haven't followed us.
Talk
And
with Anna.
talk with Anna, and we have the ambiguous loss letter. We have just different tools. We have different
Mhm.
meditations.
Mhm.
And then also, this is a time where you could find a local therapist. You can reach
Wonderful.
out to us. I have like therapy slots of groups forming, but there's also free resources. There's 12-step groups. I'll often recommend if you had chronic dysfunction in your childhood, like ACA or Al Anon. But whatever, I think, again, these are only suggestions. You find what works for you. And if there's a safe or supportive friend that you can even talk to on Father's Day, that's another resource. But I think one of our main purposes is to give you permission to feel not roses and butterflies on
Mhm.
Father's Day
Yeah.
because
You
I
do
think,
not have to go to a barbecue if you do not want to go to a
yeah,
barbecue.
yeah,
Like take care of yourself. And it's
yeah.
okay to feel weird about this.
Yeah,
Like,
and if you've had parental loss, if you had a narcissistic abuse happen, if you had a borderline parent, if you had an alcoholic parent, actually we know that this day might be actually a day of mourning, and that's
Yeah,
totally healthy because that's
totally.
acknowledging the truth of what you went through, which is validating yourself instead of gaslighting your own reality, which is probably what has happened historically,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. We've signed the permission slip.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. That's good, Sarah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The doctor's note is ready.
Ooh.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much for doing this with me. This is
Thank
very
you for
healing.
sharing so openly and honestly, Sarah. And
Yes,
thank you
Carol.
all for listening. And maybe we'll have some more of these conversations. Let us know if you want other topics. And if this topic resonated with you with the father wound and you haven't heard all our wonderful content on the mother wound, please listen to some of that. And we also have the podcasts up right on Spotify, I think, or
Yeah.
where do we have them?
You can find the
Yeah.
podcast on
Yeah.
Spotify. You can find YouTube
Yeah.
has
We have some YouTube
loads. The
loads.
catalog on YouTube is rich.
Yeah, all
TikTok,
right. There
we
you
got a lot
go.
of fun on TikTok. We got the Instagram going, all talking
Wonderful.
Donna. And Substack, of course, has the great resources. The last four issues are all about grieving for Father's Day and the different aspects of it. They come full of these really compelling journal
Yeah.
prompts. It's a great therapy supplement.
Can't
Whether
wait to
you are
post it.
between therapists or you are just want to do a little bit of
Yeah.
homework to help you to communicate with the therapists that you do have,
Yeah.
they are there to help you here in this now moment. And so there's an ambiguous loss journal, and there's also a like 10 things you could do to support your nervous system this week.
I love that one.
These talking about little
I'm
actions,
gonna
little
review that one.
yeah, it's a good
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
It's
All right. Thank you all for listening and have a nice rest of your day.